My name is Joseph Edward Smith. I'm 80 years old. I spent years believing that if I did not have at least $1 million set aside for retirement, then I would always be one bad surprise away from trouble. I want to tell you why I believed that, why I held on to it for so long, and why I finally had to admit that the truth was not nearly as simple as that big, shiny number. I know how that number feels. I know how it sits in your chest. I know how it can make you feel safe when you imagine reaching it, and ashamed when you think you may never get there. I also know how easy it is for me to hear one sentence often enough that I start treating it like law. For me, that sentence was this: I need $1 million to retire. Honestly, I repeated that idea to myself for years. Even after I built wealth, even after I retired, even after I had more choices than I ever expected, I still kept wondering whether $1 million was the true line between peace and fear. Then I looked at what Americans really have saved, and what retired people actually live on, and I realized I had been measuring retirement with a ruler that did not fit most real lives. I want to show you what changed my mind. I spent most of my life around books, not around flashy people. I worked in libraries. I listened more than I talked. I watched people come in scared, curious, tired, embarrassed, hopeful, and confused. I also watched what money anxiety did to people. I saw it in my father when I was young, and I never forgot it. I promised myself early that I would save, invest, and prepare. So when I heard people say I needed $1 million to retire, I did not laugh at it. I took it seriously. I wrote it down. I measured myself against it. I let it become one of those ideas that follows a man around the room, even when nobody is speaking. One afternoon, after hearing that same claim again, I sat down and asked myself a very simple question. How many people in this country actually have $1 million saved for retirement? I did not want opinions. I did not want motivational talk. I wanted numbers. Let me explain. I wanted to know whether that $1 million standard was common, rare, realistic, or mostly a story we tell each other because round numbers sound powerful. The first figures I found hit me harder than I expected. I learned that more than half of Americans have less than $10,000 saved for retirement. I stopped there for a minute. I read it again. I wrote it down by hand because I wanted to make sure I was not reading too fast. More than half. I didn't know it at the time, but that one figure was already pulling the floor out from under the old story in my head. If more than half of Americans had less than $10,000 saved, then the $1 million rule was not a normal benchmark. It was something else entirely. Then I kept going. I saw that another large group had somewhere between $10,000 and $100,000 saved. Then I saw another group had between $100,000 and $500,000. I started adding the percentages together, slowly, the way I used to check budget figures at my desk. And when I finished, I saw that the overwhelming majority of Americans had less than $500,000 saved for retirement. Not 1 million, less than $500,000. You see, that matters because $500,000 is not just below $1 million. In my mind, it had always felt like a different world. But for most Americans, even that lower world is still out of reach. Then I looked at the next slice. I saw that only a small group had between $500,000 and $1 million saved. And then I looked at the group with $1 million or more. Fewer than 5%. I had to sit back in my chair when I saw that. Fewer than 5%. All that pressure, all that talk, all that advice delivered like a commandment. And fewer than 5% of Americans actually have $1 million or more in retirement accounts. You know what surprised me most? I was not surprised that the number was small. I was surprised by how often I had heard that standard repeated, as if it described ordinary reality. Now, I have to be fair with numbers because I have lived long enough to know that a statistic can be true and still leave a person confused. Those figures were about tax-advantaged retirement accounts. They were not the full picture of a life. They did not include taxable investment accounts. They did not include cash outside retirement plans. They did not include other assets. And they did not include the value of a home, which for many people in later life is one of the biggest parts of everything they own. And here's what I didn't understand then, at least not completely. When I heard the phrase saved for retirement, I often translated it in my head as everything that matters financially. But that is not what those words mean. A person can have a modest 401k, a small IRA, and still have meaningful net worth because a mortgage has been paid down over 30 years. A person can have savings outside retirement accounts. A person can own property. A person can have no debt. So I moved from looking at retirement savings alone to looking at net worth because I wanted a picture that looked more like a real household and less like one statement in one folder. When I looked at median net worth by age, I felt concerned, but I also felt grounded. I saw that people under 35 had a median net worth under $40,000. I saw that ages 35 to 44 were around $135,000. I saw that ages 45 to 54 were around $250,000. Then I came to the years that make people sit up a little straighter in their chairs. I came to ages 55 to 64, the years when retirement starts looking less like a distant word and more like a date on the calendar. The median net worth there was about $365,000. That number stayed with me. I kept turning it over in my mind. I thought about what it meant in practical terms. I thought about how much of that was likely tied to a house. I thought about how many people near retirement may look poor on a retirement statement and much stronger on a full balance sheet. I thought about all the people who scare themselves with one account page while ignoring the rest of the structure they have built. Then I looked at ages 65 to 74, when many people are already retired, and I saw the median net worth was around $410,000. Again, I was nowhere near 1 million. Again, I was looking at the truth of how most retirement lives are actually shaped. So I had to tell myself something I did not really want to say out loud. If most people retire without $1 million, and if many people retire without even half that amount in retirement accounts, then I cannot keep pretending that $1 million is some universal ticket into old age. I can say it is a worthy goal. I can say I would rather have more than less. I can say I like big margins of safety. All of that is true. But I cannot say with a straight face that 1 million is the only number that makes retirement possible, because real life does not support that claim. That realization led me to the next question, and for me this was the question that mattered most. How do retirees make it work if so many of them have less money saved than the financial world keeps telling them they need? Honestly, that question opened the door to the whole rest of the subject. I did not want comforting nonsense. I wanted a real answer. I wanted something I could say to another person without feeling like I was lying to them. So I kept reading. I found reports showing that many older people with what looked like modest savings still said they were doing okay or living comfortably. I want to be careful with that because I do not want my words twisted. I am not saying I think $50,000 or $100,000 is an ideal target. I do not think that. I would never tell a younger version of myself to stop saving once I reached that level. But I am saying that many real retirees with savings in that range still report that they are managing. Some even say they are comfortable. That matters because it challenges the fear-based picture so many people carry around. Why does that happen? I found one very important reason right away. I found Social Security sitting in the middle of the answer. You see, I hear people talk about Social Security in two extremes. I hear people dismiss it like it barely matters, or I hear people talk about it as if it will disappear tomorrow morning. I do not see it that way. I see it as a major part of how millions of retirees live month to month. For many people, it is the foundation. It is not the whole house, but it is the floor under the house. When I looked at average benefits, I understood that point more clearly. An individual check around $2,000 a month may not sound dramatic to a younger person who is still paying for children, commuting, and every other expense that fills the middle years. But I know that in retirement, when certain bills are gone or smaller, that kind of steady income can matter enormously. For a couple, those checks together can add up to a level of annual income that is not luxurious, but far from meaningless. Let me explain. When income arrives every month, when a mortgage may be reduced or gone, when spending is more controlled, and when daily life is simpler, that steady stream can carry much more weight than outsiders think. I know the worries about Social Security. I know the headlines. I know the trust fund problems are real. I know some people hear those projections and assume there will be nothing left. I do not believe that. Maybe I am showing my age. Maybe I still have more faith than I should. But I believe lawmakers will do something. And even before any change, I know projected payroll taxes are still expected to cover a large portion of benefits. I do not say that so I can relax. I say it so I can think clearly. Panic is not a plan. I learned that a long time ago. Then I looked at claiming ages, and I saw another piece that people often overlook. I saw that the monthly amount changes depending on when benefits begin. If I claim early, I get less. If I wait until full retirement age, I get more. If I wait until 70, I get more still. I made that choice myself. I delayed. I used my pension, my investments, and my other income first because I wanted the larger guaranteed check later. That decision fit my life. I know it cannot fit every life. But I also know many people underestimate how much timing matters. I used to think retirement planning was mostly about building one giant pile of money. I do not think that anymore. I think retirement is more like building a stool with several legs. I may have one leg in savings. I may have one leg in home equity. I may have one leg in Social Security. I may have one leg in a pension, a part-time income, or some other support. If one leg is shorter than I hoped, I may still have a stable seat if the others are strong. That idea helped me more than the million-dollar slogan ever did, because it matched what I was seeing in real households. I do not want anybody to hear me and become careless. I do not want anybody to say, "Joe says I do not need to save." I would never say that. I saved aggressively because I knew what insecurity looked like. I invested because I wanted freedom. I planned because I did not want my old age to depend on luck. I still believe in all of that. But I also believe in perspective. I believe in honest context. I believe in telling people the truth, even when the truth is less dramatic than the slogan. If I have less than I hoped, I do not need shame. If I have more than I expected, I do not need pride. I need clarity. I need to know what I own, what I owe, what comes in each month and what goes out. I need to know what choices still belong to me. I need to know whether I can cut spending, move, downsize, work a little longer, or delay a benefit. I need to know whether my fear is coming from my actual numbers or from a sentence I heard too many times. You know what surprised me most after all of this? I was surprised by how much relief can come from seeing the real distribution instead of the fantasy standard. I was surprised by how many decent people think they have failed when they are actually standing in the same financial neighborhood as millions of other Americans. I was surprised by how much damage a repeated slogan can do to a person's peace of mind. I also want to say one more thing because I think this is where many people get stuck. I know some people hear numbers like these and immediately ask me whether I am lowering expectations. I am not. I am raising honesty. I still want my children, my grandchildren, and anybody listening to save more than they think they need, because life has a way of charging extra when we least expect it. I still believe in margins. I still believe in discipline. I still believe that a bigger cushion gives me more choices. But I also believe that fear can paralyze a person who should be planning calmly. I have seen people freeze because they think missing one giant milestone means the game is over. It is not over. If I am breathing, if I can still make decisions, if I can still adjust spending, if I can still learn my options, then I still have room to improve my future. That matters to me. It should matter to you too. I did not build my life by chasing panic. I built my life by facing facts, making steady choices, and refusing to confuse a frightening headline with the whole truth of my situation. I learned retirement gets clearer when I stop worshiping slogans and start studying my own numbers with patience, humility, and common sense. I became wealthy over time, yes, and I am grateful for that. But even with all of that, I still had to unlearn the idea that one number decides whether retirement works. It does not. I believe the better question is this: what does my full structure look like? What do I own? What do I owe? What income will keep coming? What expenses can I control? What decisions can still improve my future? Honestly, that question has far more power than asking whether I hit one big round milestone. If I helped you see this more clearly, I hope you will stay with me. I would love for you to leave me a comment and tell me what number or rule people repeated to you so often that you started believing it without even checking it for yourself. I read those comments carefully because I know I am not the only person who has had to untangle fear from fact. And if this talk gave you some relief, or maybe gave you a firmer view of where you really stand, then I hope you will subscribe and keep walking with me. I spend a lot of time thinking about retirement, but I also spend a lot of time thinking about the years before retirement, because I know the journey matters too. I know the waiting matters. I know the habits matter. I know the mindset matters. And I know that enjoying the road before the destination may be one of the wisest financial decisions I ever learned to make. So if you want more conversations like this, with no shouting and no nonsense, I would be glad to see you again.